Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you can catch new spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so as you guys know lately, we've been going in with a lot of Black Panther spills, and part of that's getting everybody ready for the movie, but the other part of it is I just like the character a lot. But with a lot of our talks about Black Panther, whether in the comments or on Twitter, I've seen this question come back time and time again, like how would a fight go between Black Panther and Wolverine? And on both ends, fans go hard for either one. On one end, you got Wolverine fans who are like, he's been fighting longer than T'Challa's been alive. He has adamantium claws, his healing factor, and really just experiencing more fights than T'Challa just because of his age, which is a great argument because all of these things are true. But even still, with that being said, a number of times when these two match up, Wolverine continually runs into the same problem, or actually a couple of problems, or maybe even a few, but still. But I'm gonna cover their issues on both ends. But starting with Wolverine, the issue he runs into repeatedly is that T'Challa is a lot faster and stronger than him. And even though Wolverine has a substantial advantage, which we'll get to in a little bit, he's never really been able to use that advantage against T'Challa simply because T'Challa refuses to let the fight get to that point. But Wolverine has even admitted before for this to be true about T'Challa's speed and his strength, and that causing a problem when they engage each other one-on-one. But this is Wolverine we're talking about. He doesn't care who you are at all. And this for a fact we know about Logan because we see him go up against people who are way stronger than him. I mean, like off the charts, and not just go up against them but do damage. In some of those fights he may not necessarily have won, like matchups that we've seen between him and the Hulk, but nonetheless with us seeing that match, we're made aware of some of Wolverine's capabilities. And I'm pretty sure that's why his first appearance came out with that type of delivery, which really made a statement for the character decades after, because it was like, okay, this dude is able to go toe to toe with the Hulk and not get smashed open like a tube of toothpaste. He might be somebody to look out for. And just as a side thought, the same way Wolverine was introduced in the comics going toe to toe with the Hulk, now with Disney buying all the properties and the possibility of Wolverine being in the MCU, I really hope that they reintroduce his character that same way. MCU Hulk versus Wolverine, that is going to be epic. And that's really the only way, like the recasting of whoever they pick will stick. Like when this new Wolverine comes on the scene, it's just gonna be like any newcomer. We're gonna look at him like, what are you doing? Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. But if this new guy pops up on screen and holds his own with the MCU Hulk is terrifying. If he holds his own with him, if done right, that's gonna put a huge stamp of approval on that actor playing that character. But tell me what you guys think about that down in the comments. But moving forward to the last issue that Wolverine has with T'Challa, and there's not many, but the last issue that Wolverine has, aside from T'Challa being substantially stronger and faster, is T'Challa also knows more fighting styles. And that is another thing that's helped T'Challa out in fights with Wolverine where he's got pinned in the corner. And by no means does this indicate that Wolverine's an inadequate fighter, because he's had extensive training in Japan, he's also has military training, and there's also a number of other fighting styles he's picked up traveling around the world. But with T'Challa literally knowing every fighting style, and some secret and unnamed, that's also made him one of the few people that in the past has given Wolverine extreme difficulty in a hand-to-hand fight. And I'll give you an example. So if you take a matchup between two fighters who know multiple forms of martial arts, as soon as they hit the ground, the first thing that comes to the minds of most is they're going to break into jiu-jitsu because it's one of the most effective ground fighting techniques. But if you go to the ground with someone who has 3 or 4 different techniques, ground fighting techniques, that you never seen or heard of, it's going to leave you like, what in the world was that? Even if you were able to get out of them. But in the history between Wolverine and Black Panther going up against one another, because of those main 3 reasons, there hasn't been like a definitive winner between the two. But I would argue to say that if they were in a match, like a cage match for instance, and you put Wolverine in the cage with Black Panther, nowhere to go, no time limit, I'd have to argue that even with Black Panther's advantages, that in this case, Wolverine would have the upper hand. And this is credit to one of his mutant powers that a lot of people just kind of brush over, because oftentimes it's emphasized about his healing factor and how well he can recover. But along with that recovery from physical damage, Wolverine has an insane amount of stamina. Like this guy can literally keep going and going on indefinitely. And that's where a lot of people who oppose Wolverine fall short, because a number of fights are truly won not only by who's the fastest or the strongest, but they go to the opponent who lasts to the end. And so his stamina is really a credit to his mutant powers. His healing factor is constantly restoring him back to his peak physical condition, and because of that, he doesn't grow fatigued like your regular human being would. And because he can perform at this high level for a long period of time, this is also the reason why in many cases he's able to take on a number of people at one time and keep fighting. And so the next thing I want to point out are his adamantium claws. And this here is not even a debate. Adamantium will will cut through vibranium. That's the way it's been, that's just the way it is. So when you take into thought these two guys in a cage match, in that instance, and really only in that instance, I'd have to give it to Wolverine. Because even though T'Challa has a great amount of endurance as well, a lot of that strength and speed is made by his connection to the Panther god Wasp, and his connection to the Panther god is amplified by his consumption of the heart-shaped herb. So over the course of time, and it would be a long time, but much sooner than Wolverine, Black Panther would slow down. And this would in turn give Wolverine the opportunity to take the upper hand. But with all things being considered and also staying true to the source material, anytime that these two have encountered each other, T'Challa's been prepared. And because of that, it would be extremely difficult for him to get put in the situation to where he would be in a cage, let alone locked in one with Wolverine. And I say this because when they encountered each other in Wolverine issue number 8, and I can't remember the volume off the top of my head, but it was in 2013. But at this point in time, when Wolverine snuck into Wakanda, he had lost his healing factor. And this all happened when he was working with Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. And at one point, he was infected with a virus that originated from the microverse. And as a result of this, his healing factor was completely shut down. And Beast made his attempts to cure Wolverine of it, but even with all his attempts and efforts, it wasn't successful. And he even sought help from Tony Stark, Hank Pym, but nobody could come up with an answer. But with Wolverine sneaking into Wakanda, and this was mainly because it was a plan, because Wakanda had already arrested somebody who was infected with this virus as well. And of course, she was quarantined and put in suspended animation, but when Wolverine arrived, T'Challa was already aware of his condition. But he also noticed Wolverine acting weird because he put 2 and 2 together and figured out that it was a distraction as well. But either way, I put emphasis on this part of this particular situation because the Black Panther has a history of taking circumstances, whether it's somebody else's defeat or a particular weakness found out in somebody else, taking that information and creating a countermeasure just in case. And we talked about this very recently because when T'Challa had to face the Silver Surfer and Galactus, his contingency plan was built off the circumstance of Dr. Doom taking the Silver Surfer's powers. And be it may an unfortunate circumstance, because T'Challa has to stay ready, he took Doom's technology and modified it into a weapon he would be able to use himself to protect Wakanda and the rest of the world from an invasion from the Silver Surfer and Galactus. And that's why I believe in this instance, with T'Challa being aware of how to disable Wolverine's healing factor, be it made through the prisoner they took into custody, or from the sources who informed T'Challa of Wolverine's condition, that T'Challa has used this information and at some point created a contingency to go against Wolverine, disabling his healing factor. Because like we mentioned before, even with the cage match scenario, being it hypothetical, if T'Challa could disable Wolverine's healing factor, it would be no match at all. But the funny thing is here, with Wolverine sneaking into Wakanda and getting caught, that was intentional, because the plan here the entire time was to distract the Black Panther so Storm could get in and take Nick Fury to the other infected prisoner who Wakanda has in quarantine. And so I know at this point plenty of you guys are like, well, this is Black Panther and Storm, why couldn't she just ask him and he'd do anything for her? Okay, so this is where it gets a little complicated, because at this point in time, Black Panther and Storm have already divorced. And since they've been divorced, Storm has kind of been seeing other people. And when I say other people, I mean Wolverine. And news travels fast, so T'Challa was aware of it, kind of how he put 2 and 2 together. How much he knew, I don't really know about all that. But one of the things that's really significant here is she was one of the main people who was there for him when he lost his powers. And not just that, but she knew where to find Wolverine when he was missing and didn't really want to be seen. She knew him well enough to go out and find him where he was at. But on top of that, she knew that Logan needed the perfect pick-me-up, which was coffee. And according to Storm, they had a lot of it. But with her being there for Logan, it helped him in a huge way. Because at this point in time, he was in a state of paranoia. Crossing the street even bugged him out. Like, he couldn't even shave his own face because he didn't know if he cut himself if it would stop bleeding. But with Storm's support, he was really able to get his head back in the game. And it wasn't until after her helping him out and helping him get back on his feet that we saw him back in the field again. And that's the thing, because when it came to the time when S.H.I.E.L.D. needed the prisoner from Wakanda and Nick Fury contacted Storm in order to achieve this, it really came to the point where talking the terms and negotiating the transfer of an inmate and also safety of contagion, it was taking too long. But when they came up with a plan of how to get in there themselves, Wolverine volunteered to be the distraction to draw out T'Challa in order for them to get this done. And at the same time, he kind of knew in the back of his mind, like from conversations that him and Storm had, that T'Challa wasn't completely over it. And Wolverine would in turn use that to his advantage to detract T'Challa even more and draw him away from Storm and Nick Fury sneaking in. And that's really how they got down to it. And the thing is, on one hand, sure, T'Challa didn't like it, but at the same time, he has enough prudence to see through it and see what Wolverine's real motive really was. But it's right here where we get the answer to the question as far as Black Panther versus Wolverine and who would win in the fight if neither one of them had powers. And so now, for some strange reason, neither one of these guys had any of their abilities, and they just had to fight each other just based on the skill they have right here and now. We're told here that Black Panther would win. And this fight in particular is not an example of that, because Black Panther's at full strength and Wolverine's not. But T'Challa at this point gives Wolverine the constructive criticism that his fighting style is based off of his healing factor. And because of that, the way he chooses to engage in combat is severely flawed, and that flaw is exposed even more when he doesn't have his healing factor. And because of that, Wolverine can't just dive into a fight like he usually does, head first, claws out, and just take any kind of damage because it doesn't matter, because without your healing factor, it does matter. And T'Challa has plenty of experience with this because he's not indestructible, and he's also gone against opponents who are much bigger and much stronger than himself, but with him not having this miraculous healing power like Wolverine has, he has ever so carefully had to master the craft of defending himself, because the injuries that Wolverine would take and just shake off would literally kill T'Challa. And because of this, he has to consider both defense and offense anytime in engaging. But as it turns out, T'Challa was already aware of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming from the prisoner, and he eventually figured out Wolverine's part in it when he found him sneaking into Wakanda. But T'Challa also revealed that he was using both Nick Fury and Storm in order to make the virus round up and protect the host. But I'm gonna end this one right here, you guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, because I could really see this fight going either way. And I explained a number of reasons why, but I want to hear what you guys think. And depending on you guys' comments, we'll probably do a poll just to see where everybody lands at. And you'll be able to find that poll under the community tab on my YouTube page. So make sure you're subscribed so you can see as soon as that poll goes up. Smash that like button if you enjoyed the video or if you learned something new. And we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.